Well, welcome to this episode of the Good Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Charles Good. My guest for this episode is Dr. Michael Woodward, who is the clinical assistant professor of executive coaching at NYU, where he leads the Masters of Science program in executive coaching. He is also a best-selling author whose latest book is titled The Digital Coaching Revolution. In this part of my conversation with Dr. Woodward, we discuss the transformative impact of technology and AI on the coaching industry. And contrary to fears of replacement, these advancements are enhancing and augmenting the roles of coaches. We also explore how the principles of sport coaching and health and wellness coaching have informed the professional coaching field. And finally, we highlight the latest innovations that are poised to redefine the future of coaching, offering insights into where the industry is headed in the coming years. I hope you enjoy. Welcome to the Good Leadership Podcast, where we engage with esteemed thought leaders and explore research-backed strategies and techniques that empower leaders at every level to achieve meaningful results that drive lasting change. Well, and you also mentioned in the book, in this chapter in particular, that you also look at it from, that technology can't replace human interaction. And I love Ted Lasso. I'm sure many listeners have watched that show as well. But the story of Ted Lasso can teach us valuable coaching lessons and also offer some responses to our fascination with technology, because audiences are drawn to him not for his high-end tech tools or analytics, but because of his genuine human qualities. His coaching philosophy emphasized human connection, empathy, trust, resilience, and inclusivity. So the heart of a great coach, like Ted Lasso, lies not in the tools they wield, but in the genuine human connection they forge, which I love that statement because I think that's important to keep the technology piece in perspective.
So first and foremost, I always tell people, I have 3 degrees in psychology. I'm a professionally trained coach. I train professional coaches at the master's level in a graduate program. And the vast majority of time that I spend with my students is about learning the human social interactions of coaching, right? And understanding the science of behavior and change, the impact of personality, the role of different styles, all the approaches out there from influenced by positive psychology, cognitive behavioral therapy, and we've morphed into cognitive behavioral coaching, which is looking at beliefs and how those influence behaviors. So that's where I spend most of my time. I talk a lot about technology, and we have this conference that we host, and we have the book. But at the end of the day, you know, we have 3 core pillars at the NYU MS degree in executive coaching and organizational consulting. One, it's to produce evidence-based practitioners with a grounding in social science. The second is to produce educated consumers of the tools and technologies out there so they understand how to use and deploy these technologies in ways that enhance human development, not get in the way of it, right? And not replace what coaches do. And then third, it's to be critical thinkers about what coaching is and what coaching will continue to evolve to be. And I think that is so important because coaching continues to evolve. Our understanding of the umbrella of activities in the coaching space has broadened. And I think that really came from the digital players understanding the marketplace and the kind of needs that were being asked for by companies. So those are so important. So I do not believe that AI is replacing coaching. I think that it's augmenting coaching. I think that it's going to provide services where we may need to fill a space as opposed to replace. And by that I mean there are so many places where we don't have enough coaches or we don't have enough capability to help people. Developing countries, here in the US, underserved communities. Can we deploy AI tools and technologies with supervision of humans to help actually spread and scale human development in ways that we haven't been able to do before and that in no way we could do with human coaches? So I think it's an and, not an or. It's human coaches, and I absolutely believe we need to spend our time continually developing human coaches and really professionalizing the practice and the profession of coaching is so important. And that's why I was so passionate about coming to NYU to launch and build out a first of a kind MS degree in the US because we desperately need it. In the UK, they're way ahead of us, right? They have masters of coaching psychology programs. I could rattle off five or six off the top of my head. I mean, it's much more popular and developed in the UK and Europe than here. We have a lot of catching up to do in the human side of professional coaching and coaching psychology. So, Charles, I don't want anyone to mistake my interest and enthusiasm about technology as any kind of way of replacing what I have a passion for, and that is the human side of coaching.
When you also mentioned there's another field that's really informed professional coaching, that's health coaching, which has been ahead of all other coaching domains in adopting technology, focusing on accessibility and convenience, integrating and tracking data, also emphasizing privacy and cost effectiveness. So, these factors have kind of contributed to the widespread adoption of virtual health coaching, which a lot of the players are into because they want to coach the entire person, having a more holistic approach. So you mentioned one great technology that I actually use and have as well with the Aura Ring that happened during the pandemic, kind of exploded with what it can track and help coaches with. But talk to me a little bit about the health coaching piece and how that's really informed the other domains of coaching.
I mean, it's similar to sports coaching, Charles. I mean, they've developed a lot of advanced technologies. They do have a lot more hurdles than we do in the workplace and life coaching space because there's a lot more regulation, right, in health and a lot more laws and protections around data and privacy. So it is a bit of a different space, but you look at a company like Headspace Health or from Ginger, or you look at like a BetterHelp, right, offering therapeutic services through digital technologies. So there's so much really cool stuff going on there. You see hospital systems who are actually use coaches to work with physicians and even to train. We see that at Langone at NYU, where they're using coaches to help train and work with physicians or even student medical students to understand the human side, but also the kind of data that they can collect is just amazing. And you do have to think of the whole person. Now there are lines we have to draw between: are you getting into the domain of a therapeutic intervention for mental health? That is not the domain of coaching where I play and the coaches I train and the coaches I work with or members of International Coaching Federation. So I have to draw some distinctions there. It's important to make sure that that's not the space that I play in, the mental health side. But has that informed a lot of our work? Yes, no doubt about it.
Let's talk a little bit more about now the AI piece because that's really the most popular, the most talked about piece. They believe that it's going to replace a lot of knowledge workers, kind of like what the Industrial Revolution did to manufacturing workers, and there's a lot of aids to amplify coaching. We've already kind of mentioned those, and it's kind of a both and, not an either or. But where is that landscape right now, and what are some of the big players using in terms of AI?
It's just amazing the rate of adaptation of AI by service providers, digital coaching platforms, professional services firms, as well as just major corporate in the US in particular. It's a space that's moving fast. So, what OpenAI did was to make the most advanced technology in the space commercially available for $20 a month for anybody to access, as long as you have Wi-Fi capabilities and enough bandwidth, right? So what that did was kind of democratize the idea of how do you use this technology. And so with that, you have the good and the bad and everything in between. So we have seen a lot of individuals out there who get on and build their own GPT coach and it performs terribly. And I've demoed versions of these coaches that you can find anywhere. You just log on, you look, you find, you pull it, and you say, "Hey, can you coach me?" And it does all sorts of strange things, right? Sometimes it can be effective, marginally so, as more of like a kind of advisor, sometimes not. Now that said, right, that's what's available to anybody, right? And my word of caution to my profession is to understand that the things that are commercially available and readily accessible tend to start to define the space. Because as young professionals out there get on their phone, go to all GPTs, and they find coach, they're like, "Oh, that's what coaching is." I experienced what a coach is using this. So that to them is going to be what coaching is, regardless of what we believe, right? So we have to keep that in mind. from just a marketing and awareness perspective. So, no, that said, there are some of the major coaching service providers are absolutely training and developing AI coach assistants or AI kind of co-pilot coaches. I've demoed some of these, and they are impressive in what they can do. Now, some of them are really about, all right, how does a human coach get you set up and on a path, and then how do you integrate the AI co-pilot or assistant in there for nudging, for capturing your goals, for you to interact with to track progress, and then come back to your human coach. So I like to call it managing the space between sessions. I think that AI is going to be very effective at doing that. Now, there has been research out there that has demonstrated that at a very basic kind of goal setting, goal planning, goal attainment level, AI coaches can be effective. Text based or voice enabled ones that basically are taking you through something very formulaic. Because if it's fairly structured and routine, and AI is probably going to do it better than a human because it's going to stay more disciplined than we are, right? So you alluded to the fact that, Charles, we're in this what I call white collar automation, or the automation of the knowledge worker, where to a similar extent we went through that in the industrial revolution, and maybe in the last 20 years with robotics replacing people on manufacturing lines in more blue collar or hourly worker uh, kind of physical labor jobs. Yes, it's now coming for white collar knowledge workers, people like us in offices. The more routine and mundane the work, the more formulaic it is, the more predictable it is, the more likely it'll be automated. Absolutely. So, knowing that that's coming, and knowing that these technologies are iterating and getting better every day, my advice to anybody, whether you're a coach or just a professional in, in law or in business or in accounting, right, is to get familiar with the adaptation of these AI technologies in your space and become super users. Because if you can adapt them and become a very sophisticated user, it can be a force multiplier for you. Those who don't adapt, who continue to do things very manually in routine ways, will be in jeopardy, no question about it. But that's why I encourage, how do you find ways to become a super user and use these technologies to buy you time back at the end of the day? So that's where I think these technologies will be helpful, but it kind of depends on your attitude and approach.
Right, and listen, some of the AI-driven coach aids, personalized learning and tracking is very common for this AI technology to do right now. AI-driven feedback, which you mentioned, one of those players, Avita. Maybe you can speak to another one like Loop that you and I have spoken about before in this space to provide that feedback. Because you're right, with coaching, you don't get a whole lot of feedback with the one-on-one interactions. But if you have technology, I'm not sure how that kind of plays with the confidentiality issues of a coaching, but they can help you, they can assist you, they can make you more effective at what you do. And then coach bots, AI enabled co pilots like Ezra has. A lot of those are coming online that are enabling a greater sophistication in that coaching process and, quite frankly, greater impact.
Yeah, you mentioned feedback, right? So one of the challenges in a lot of coaching is you're relying, as a coach, you're relying on the coachee, the client, to give you their perspective. Um, Often that perspective is not accurate, um, or at least it's tilted, or it's from a certain point of view that isn't very well rounded. And so traditionally we rely on like large scale 360s, these 50, 100 questionnaire surveys that you deploy and people fill out, and then you get a boilerplate report and it tells you about the person and so on. Those aren't super helpful either, and they take a lot to deploy. They're very top down. So Loop is one technology, but I think we're seeing others being adapted where you could deploy sort of mini surveys in the flow of work to get feedback for your client about the experiments that you're working with them on trying. So, as a simple example, I'm working with a client and he really wants to focus on how he engages his team in team meetings, draws them in, gets them to interact, share, and then make commitments, and then go forth and be clear on what they're committed to doing and what they're going to deliver, right? Common meeting problem, right? People leave, they don't know what to do, there's no agreement. So I could rely on him to tell me how that meeting went based on the things that we work on that he's going to try. Or I could say, hey, why don't you deploy a loop or some kind of survey feedback tool to find out what happened, and let's make it text based. And the AI will read all the text, and using qualitative type research procedures will categorize the themes and feed it back to you. So as a coach, I can say, you know what, Charles, here's what we worked on, and here's how your take on how that meeting went. Here's what those who sat there and experienced you are telling us. And let's use that feedback to work on how to get better for next time. So we know there are ways that we can use AI to really help us and expedite the process of getting feedback, synthesizing that feedback, and working with the coach to figure out what to do with it in the motion or flow of work, which is what's most important. So that's just one example. But yeah, we're like I said, we're figuring out new ways every day to get more and better information to inform the coaching conversation.
And I think right now it's at the level of coaching aids. It's not yet to the level of AI coaching, which you had an insightful comment before that a lot of the more formulaic type of coaching, like using the grow model, perhaps AI could be a better alternative than what a human could be in some cases because they're more disciplined. You can argue that a coach bot can just as easily be aligned with programmed organizational objectives and stick to a process better than a human coach. So in a sense, it bolsters the case for coach bots possibly being better suited for certain types of coaching.
Yeah, for certain basic types of work, I mean, at the end of the day, you always want to have human supervision in there and a human element. But when it really comes on ferreting out like the challenge that I have as a leader, as a manager, as a team lead, you really need that human interaction, that individual who can knows how to ask the right questions, knows how to be present and listen with all their senses, right? And capture all the things that are going on in the nuances of the human interaction of a coach and coachee. That is still the domain of the human coach, no question about it. And that's the kind of coaching, I train my coaches to do, the kind of coaching that I've been involved with for a long time is so, so important. Um, now, and that said, but if we want to really scale, certainly, and democratize coaching, at the earlier stages of the employee life cycle, I think AI tools can be very helpful because we know some of the challenges that they're going to have. We can predict some of the um, walls they're going to run up against that different AI tools might be able to help them with and be more on demand um, and accessible than a human coach would be. So it's how do we integrate both so that we make the organization better, so we make the experience of the employee better, so that ultimately whatever clients or customers they're serving will have a better experience.
Where do you see the digital coaching revolution going in the next 3 to 5 years? What's kind of the next steps?
Yeah, I mean, when we looked at the digital coaching revolution, that was really the commercialization or more broad commercialization of coaching services by being able to scale services to an extent, right? And manage those services in an effective way for organizations, right? And so that's what the digital coaching providers were doing. And that's how they came on the scene and became effective. And they really helped bring a consciousness and awareness of the importance of coaching that we'd never really had before. Um, and they helped bring it outside of just the C suite, right? To a broader audience. Maybe not completely to the employee, but at least to a broader audience in organizations. So that was that digital coaching revolution. It was really upending and rethinking coaching, what coaching means, how to deliver coaching. Now, I think it's no surprise AI is going to bring mass change. So all the things that you and I have been discussing about where AIs can be the co-pilot, can manage the space between, can help with very formulaic, basic types of human development, we're just going to see mass increases in the use of AI technology, in the use cases for AI technology. And I think it's going to develop and get better every single day. So, I mean, I think in the next year or so, we're going to see a lot of different types of coach bots or AI coach agents out there doing various different things. Some will be kind of low level, not very good, like the publicly available ones, but some of the ones being developed by some of these large digital platforms or professional services firms, I think are going to be very interesting and very effective.
What can leaders and organizations do to stay ahead of the curve and get on board with this revolution so they don't feel like they're just treading water and scrambling to kind of stay current?
Don't be afraid, test it, encourage your team members to test, come up with different ideas of ways of using the technologies. And I think just, get your hands on it, get involved, get engaged. I think read, particularly in your own profession, whatever trade publication, certainly find out what they're doing, find out what others are testing and trying. Certainly, I'm on the board of the Thought Leadership Institute at the International Coaching Federation, where I'm co-chairing a task force on AI and coaching. So we've leaned in to pay attention. We're trying to understand from the developers of these technologies what they can and can't do, where they're going, so that we can inform our community. We're also engaging coaches, enterprise coaching leaders to understand how they're using these technologies, where the challenges are, where the pitfalls are, so we can better inform ourselves, our members, and the wider coaching community out there. So you want to engage your professional associations, and I think engage the tech yourself.
Thank you so much, Dr. Woodward, for joining me today on this episode. Remind our listeners how they can get in contact with you, learn more about your work, and get that new book.
Just find me on LinkedIn, Dr. Woody Woodward, or just Google Dr. Woody or Dr. Woody Woodward. I'm pretty easy to find.
I hope this episode has provided you with valuable insights. If it has, I ask you to share it with someone who would also benefit from it. If you've been enjoying and gaining knowledge from this podcast, then subscribe to our YouTube channel, where you can find all the previous episodes of the podcast and additional learning resources. You can also subscribe to the podcast on Apple or Spotify and leave up to a 5-star review.